right here is where I turned on Star Trek Picard. There had been some warning signs before then, some weird dialogue or decisions that didn't make much sense, but here, the start of Season 1, Episode 5, with Star Trek Voyager's Icheb getting his eyeball ripped out and then mercy killed by 7 of 9, is when the show broke for me. It's not that I'm desperately attached to the character of Icheb. I honestly never loved the whole plotline where 7 becomes a surrogate mum. It being Icheb is not why it bothered me so much. It bothered me so much because of what it represented. It's symbolic of everything wrong with modern Star Trek. It's needlessly graphic and violent. Modern Star Trek loves to have this dark and gritty tone and world that's supposed to make it seem more current, but what it actually does is make it generic. Every sci-fi show looks like this. Ever since Black Mirror, this has been the default sci-fi tone. The reasons this happened to Icheb are annoying and convoluted. Some lady was harvesting his Borg prosthetics, and rather than sedate him, they just strapped him down and did it while he was alive and screaming because they're anti-Borg racists and they view him as less than human. Because modern Star Trek doesn't have villains, it has caricatures. People who are so over the top they may as well be serving on Dr. Evil's council. All of this in service of a plotline that is resolved in the same episode. 7 of 9 beams down with 2 Halo assault rifles and gets her vengeance on the villain with about as much screen time as Icheb himself, and it never comes up again. But none of this is why it really got under my skin. Those are all reasons why it's bad and not entertaining to watch, but it got under my skin because of how it manipulated nostalgia. I don't have any particular investment in Icheb, but it used the fact that I knew Icheb and that I knew 7 of 9 as a shortcut to writing an actually compelling story. This is a video about Season 3 of Star Trek Picard. I liked Season 3 a lot, but I think it's important to establish just how much whiplash there is between Seasons 1 and 2 of this show and this one. Season 1 was airing just before the pandemic hit where I live, so after this episode I actually got up, put on my coat, and walked around to the local Dairy Queen to buy myself some ice cream to try and cheer myself up. And that became a ritual for me for the rest of the season. Season 2, I didn't have that option, but Season 2 also wasn't bad in the way that Season 1 was bad. Season 2 was bad in a more normal way. It didn't have that corrupting element that Season 1 had. Star Trek Picard is, at its foundation, a show about nostalgia. I mean, it's called Star Trek Picard. It's all about a character who hasn't been on air for 20 years. I thought that didn't matter to me though. I never actually watched Star Trek until I was an adult. In fact, I only finished my marathon of the franchise a couple months before Star Trek Picard started airing. I thought I was immune to Star Trek nostalgia. Season 3 is really making me question how immune I actually am, because when I look at it logically, it has a lot of the same problems I just listed. It's dark and gritty, it's needlessly violent sometimes, it has some really silly plot contrivances. It does the same thing where it brings back characters you know and kills them off instantly, using your existing connections to make the moment more impactful than it would be otherwise. And yet, I liked it this time. Is Season 3 actually that much better than the previous 2 seasons, or am I just being blinded by nostalgia? Is all it takes to make me happy seeing characters I enjoy doing things I like to see them doing again? Because if it is, I don't think I'm a very good critic. And then I wondered about it some more. Why do I have such an active distrust of nostalgia? Nostalgia isn't good or bad, it's just a thing that exists, a natural part of the human psyche that we don't fully comprehend. Maybe Season 3 isn't better because it's less reliant on nostalgia. It definitely isn't. Maybe Season 3 works better because it understands how to use that nostalgia. Okay, let's back up for a second. Season 3 may have some of the same flaws as previous seasons, but even devoid of all of this nostalgia talk, Season 3 is dramatically better written than previous seasons. I don't want to rehash all my problems with Season 1 and 2 because I've already made videos about that, but suffice it to say that Season 3 addresses almost all of the major structural problems of the previous seasons. It has a clear and easy to follow plot, it has mysteries that are actually thought out and have coherent answers, individual episodes are actually actually written like episodes with beginnings, middles, and ends, and not incoherent chunks of story that just sort of begin and end wherever. The season has cut out almost all of its badly handled political allegories in favour of telling a more general adventure story, which, to be clear, I don't have any issues with political allegories, but Picard's were not very good, and the show is better without them. Most important for me, the characters actually speak like real people and not in poetic nonsense jargon of the previous seasons, especially season 2.
The part of me that really wants is the part that has to wait in line.
You even tried to be lovers, didn't you?
Tried is the operative word.
The show looks incredible, way better than either of the previous seasons. It's true that most of the show takes place on like 3 sets, but all of the space shots look fantastic. It's CGI that's easily comparable to a movie, and honestly, blows anything that Star Wars or Marvel have done in the last few years out of the water. I don't know how they do it. Compared to Season 2, it's almost insane that we're talking about the same show. Season 2 was one of the worst shows I've ever seen, and has shots that look like YouTube skits. The ground level of improvement is almost unbelievable, but none of that is what made me like the show. These are all improvements that bring the show up to like standard normal show level. What makes me like the show is, for better or for worse, the nostalgia. The gimmick of Season 3, the main thing that puts it apart from the previous seasons, is that the whole crew is back, not just Picard. All of the primary TNG cast, all played by their original actors. And it's that decision, more than anything else, that makes this season work so much better than before. Seeing the whole crew together again is an incredibly powerful image in a way that I don't fully understand in myself. After all, in my brain, TNG is only 3 years old. But the show is more than an image. Presenting a familiar image is enough to trigger nostalgia, but it's not enough to do more than that. What the show does is it uses that nostalgia to tell a new story and explore the evolution of character dynamics with the older and somewhat wiser crew. It's not just that we see Riker and Picard back on the bridge again. That's the nostalgic element, but their dynamic as older men is different. They're on equal footing. Riker has 2 decades of captaining under his belt now, where Picard has a decade of winemaking. They're more friends than they are superior and subordinate, and that change means that in times of crisis, their responses to the situation and to each other are different to how they would have been in TNG.
League gives us only one advantage. She doesn't know that we know that we're being tracked.
I understand you're amped up, you have a son on board, and it's affecting...
Well, why?
I'm taking the ship and her crew home.
Using nostalgia is easy. Nostalgia is why Picard was made. Understanding nostalgia is harder. Seasons 1 and 2 understand nostalgia as simply visuals and names. Hugh, Borg, Data, Guinan, Q, 10 Forward. Season 3 actually understands and reflects why people are nostalgic about those names and visuals. It's not the characters that are important, it's their place in the story and the character dynamics that they bring. The show in its original inception was built on this misunderstanding. People were not nostalgic for Jean-Luc Picard. They were nostalgic for Star Trek: The Next Generation. People were not nostalgic for Data. They were nostalgic for Data's place in the cast. What he brings to the discussion, his misunderstandings of humour and his desires to be human, are not just important to the character alone. They're important for the reactions they provoke in the rest of the crew, be it the indulgent smile from Riker, or the groaning eye roll from Worf, or the genuine warmth and curiosity from Geordi. It's not just nice to see these dynamics in play again because it's nostalgic, it's nice to see them again because they work. They made for 7 seasons of a TV show where the only connection between each episode was these characters and their dynamics. If they had just brought back all of the characters but hadn't brought back the dynamics, if they all seemed like fundamentally different people, or if the last 30 years hadn't changed them at all and they were all just total replicas of their old selves, then the show wouldn't work, and the nostalgia would fall flat like the previous seasons. The character dynamics and the evolution of those dynamics is what allows the show to work so well. Not just seeing Geordi again, but seeing an older, fatherly Geordi. Not just seeing Dr. Crusher again, but seeing a Crusher who spent 20 years raising a new son, desperate to make sure he doesn't grow up to become Wil Wheaton. At a basic, structural level, Star Trek has always been about one thing: different people with interesting and clashing personalities and backgrounds coming together to solve problems. That's the formula of TOS, TNG, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, and even Discovery. Eventually, Star Trek Picard broke the format, and that, more than anything else, is why its nostalgia fell flat. A character in any show, but especially in a Star Trek show, is only as interesting as the world around them. Captain Picard is a great character, but his greatness is not based on him alone. It's based on what his character brings to the dynamic of the rest of the show. He's the straight man, the stoic leader, the master of the last-minute speech. These are the skills and attributes he brings to the table, but he was never the main character of TNG, just the leader. Picard Season 3 understands that so much better than the previous seasons, better even than the TNG movies. Star Trek was never about protagonists, it's about ensembles. Nostalgia is an incredibly powerful tool for a writer to use. In most cases, it's used as a crutch and as a shorthand for doing any actual work. That expands way beyond Star Trek Picard and into most media in our modern landscape. Nostalgia has always been present in media, but specifically in our era, it's focused on specific characters and images, as opposed to more general vibes like it was for previous generations. TNG itself was a nostalgic throwback to 60s sci-fi. Star Wars, especially the Book of Boba Fett, is a great example, drawing in tons and tons of Star Wars things for nothing further than the cheap thrill of seeing a thing you know. It's really hard to account for as a critic because in some sense nostalgia always works, provided you've seen and remember the thing that's been reintroduced. There is absolutely nothing I can do to suppress my childhood glee at seeing Cad Bane, even if his place in the story is extremely misguided. The mark of a truly good sequel or reboot or whatever you want to call it is effective use of nostalgia, not just showing you things you know, but using the idea of nostalgia as a storytelling tool. Picard Season 3 is about many things, one of the biggest themes being parenthood, but it's also in some sense about nostalgia, a yearning for better and simpler times. In a metatextual way, it's not just fans who are yearning for the olden days of brightly lit starships and episode of the week adventures. The characters are yearning for that too. Picard misses being on starships, he misses exploration. So do Riker and Troy living in their log cabin. In fact, the scene where Riker and Troy talk about it almost feels like a direct call out of the entire world of New Trek, a tacit acknowledgement that maybe things have gone a bit wrong, but they can go back to the way they were again. Nostalgia can be manipulated, and there is for sure some of that in Season 3, especially on the soundtrack, but it's a less cynical and less depressing manipulation than Season 1. Manipulation is a dirty word, but if it's manipulation that's also giving me what I want, a more optimistic Star Trek where a team of misfits solve a problem, is that really so bad? Am I too big to admit that a shot lifted almost directly from Star Trek 2 still invokes the same emotions of adventure and discovery as it did in 1982? Or more accurately 2019 when I actually watched it? Maybe I should just give into nostalgia. Let it take me, let it carry me past the parts of the show that are a bit silly or a bit dark. Maybe in an age of cynicism, it's okay for me to just enjoy seeing the characters I like again.
You know, it wasn't until this moment, reunited with all of you, I realized what I've missed most. The carpet.
I think Season 3 has issues that nostalgia is covering up for me, but I also fully believe that the season has power and creativity in its own right. Picard may have lost me in Season 1, Episode 5, but then, in a way, I never thought it could. It won me back again. The end of Season 3, Episode 4, when the Titan escapes the clutches of death through ingenuity and teamwork, and as their reward, the nebula bursts into a glorious swarm of glowy space squids. And I loved it. The music, the effects, the acting, the themes of the episode, it all coalesced into this beautiful image, and honestly, it made me tear up a little bit. It's symbolic of everything I love about Star Trek, everything I love about sci-fi in general. It expands my creativity, shows me images I couldn't even imagine, and worlds and creatures that inspire me, make me hopeful for the future that we can one day see what's out there in that infinite space for real. Things can get dark, bleak, hopeless, but there's always a way out, always a light at the end of the tunnel, and we can reach it. One day, if we all come together and make it so. It feels like we're at the edge of something, like we're within grabbing distance of the Star Trek show that I really want. An episodic adventure show set in the post-Picard era, where we continue to explore new worlds while revisiting the old ones and shedding new light on them. A brightly lit, optimistic view of the future. But that requires that they learn the right lessons from the success of Picard Season 3. It's highly possible that the only lesson they learn is that nostalgia works, that we're just going to get a torrent of revivals, a Miles O'Brien spin-off, a Harry Kim show, a Deep Space Nine revival, and that'll be fine, but there's only so long you can milk a cash cow. There's a way to balance it, to find the best of both worlds, as it were. I know there is. Picard Season 3 is a glimpse of what could be possible, but after years of disappointment, it's hard to hold on to that. Maybe I just need to practice what I preach a little bit. Maybe I need some optimism about the future. Thank you for watching, and a very special thank you to my patrons, who this time have an extra bonus treat of a little bonus video. You might be curious to learn more about what I would do with a future Star Trek show, and that's what I do in this patron video, is go over my pitch for what I would do in the next Star Trek show. It's totally unessential to this video, but if that's something that might interest you, you can find the link in the description below, as well as a like, a comment, a share, and a subscribe if you want to help me out some more. I know this video wasn't as in-depth as some of you might have been hoping for, but I have already, or will be, recording a podcast with my good friend and massive Trekkie Nathan, where we will for sure go into much more detail, and you can find that there whenever it actually comes out. Or if you want to visit some of my other Star Trek videos, you can find those down here.